Salesforce Security, Programmatic, or also known as Apex sharing. Welcome to another session of Steve's Security Deep Dive. We've been diving into sharing rules. Now, we've gone through a number of mechanisms, including criteria rules and owner-based rules and many other different rules. And they're powerful, but there are situations where they hit limitations. 50 different buckets for criteria, 300 for your owner rules. There are times where you need to make a decision based on the record and something about it, or even one of its parents or linked records, or something about the user and some kind of field or qualification on the user. And based on those decisions, decide whether each individual user or group should or should not get access to the record. And when you get down to that level of detail, then programmatic or Apex sharing is the best tool you have to deal with it. So we're going to dive in. So we're talking about record level visibility. We're talking about those being the files in the file cabinet. And we're talking about the user already having object level access through the profiles or permission sets. So when we're talking about sharing a record, we've gone through some configuration or code, and the one we're discussing today is about code. Now, there can be limitations. A key limitation is you need to have access to the share table, and the high volume customer community licenses don't have access to the share table. So this mechanism does not apply to them. We're here to talk about set number 4, way number 11, programmatic sharing, also known as Apex sharing. And this is where we're going to create share records, and we're going to need to think about monitoring for changes on the records and monitoring for changes on the user. So programmatic sharing, there is the share table, which is associated with the object. And then even custom objects have the share table. Those that are in the detail side of a master detail do not have access to the share table. Now, if I look at Workbench, and I'm looking in a particular sandbox I'm working in, and I look at an object, you can see that I have the account object, and there is the account share. If I have a custom object, I have a banana object and a banana share. And the one we're going to be looking at today is I have an OA runway object. And so I have an OA runway and an OA runway share. And so this OA runway share, which I can query, can show me all the different shares that are available inside of the share table. So this is an important concept, is that there is a share table, and it's kind of a shadow image of the primary table, and it is where Salesforce manages sharing records. So what we're going to do is the share table, it includes records supporting the 3 kinds of shares: the managed sharing, user managed sharing, and Apex managed sharing. Now, it does not include those that are implicit, such as view all, modify all. These are not tracked in that object, and high volume customer community license cannot access the share table. Now, what we'll do is we're going to be creating a share record, an individual share record that will grant access. And by accessing a record in the share table, we designate edit or read. All is the value, but you can't set it. The parent ID is the record that we're sharing. The row cause is an important reason. And then the user or the group that we're granting with. So we could be granting this to a single user, or we could be granting this to a group, which is very powerful because we can put any number of users in a group, create a single share, and have that share with the entire group. And as we learned in previous conversations, our groups could include other groups, and our groups can include roles and subordinates. So this could be extremely powerful. Now we can also share with a territory group. And as we talked about our territory models, this could be powerful. So this grants us the ability to selectively pick records and grant these shares. Now, unlike Teams, where I showed you being able to add team member in code, there's no user interface for this. So this just creates the share, which grants the access. There is no visual representation. Now there's an important concept when you do Apex or programmatic sharing is that you need to do a sharing reason. This is a way for you to track why it was shared, and you need to include the reason. Now first you need to create a reason, and this reason can even be translated. So we're going to walk through, we're going to talk about what it needs to create a sharing reason. Now you need to go to Classic to create a sharing reason. It's not available in Lightning. You need to go to the related list on the object and create a new sharing reason. Let's take a look at this. So I'm on the OA runway object. It's a custom object I've been using. And if I look at the related list, fields, page layouts, compact layouts, there's no sharing reason. So what I'm going to instead do is go to my user, switch to Salesforce Classic, go to Setup. I'm going to go find Create Objects, and then find that same object, OA Runway. And now I'm going to work my way through my related list. So this is the same data viewed through Classic. And you'll see that there is a related list called Apex Sharing Reason. And I have created one called Pilot. So this is a pilot sharing reason on the OA runway. So this means that when I'm going to share a record, it's going to be because I have designated to be flagged with the sharing reason of pilot. What I'm going to do is from here, switch to Lightning. And now I'm back in Lightning. Now, in order to grant access, you need these handful of lines of code. You need to create a new share. You need to choose the parent, the record that you're sharing. You need to choose the user, what you're going to grant, and then you need to give the proper row cause, which is the sharing. And you'll see that I'm using this schema, hitting the object, doing the row cause, and notice I put the _ C and doing the insert. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to walk through this code. First, what I can do is I'll need to find the target user, the target record, and I can actually take a look at the shares. So let's take a look at this. So here I am logged in. I'm actually logged in with a different user now, with Paul the pilot. So Paul the pilot is looking at the runways, and Paul the pilot only sees 3 records. So how does Paul only see 3 records? Is what we're going to do. So we're going to take a look. Now I'm back as sysadmin in a different browser, and I can run a query. Select ID, parent ID, group, where the user is Paul's user record. And I'm going to query this. And this is showing me 3 records. And so one of these is because Paul owns 1 record. 2 is there was a manually granted share record to Paul. And then 3, I had already created a Apex sharing which granted him access as pilot. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back in as sysadmin. We're going to go find a new record. So we're going to go to OA Airport, OA Runways. We're going to just choose a runway. Just one of these random runways, and I can grab its Salesforce ID from right here. And now I have this code. This is the code of what it takes to create a share. So first, we're going to create a new share object. Its parent will now be this record we just pasted. So I pasted in the parent. I'm keeping the same user as Paul, the pilot. I did change my share reason to read the schema. And the way I can find Paul, the pilot, is I can go to the user and select the ID and name from the user. Here. And so what I did is I can look and find Paul the pilot with the OIAS. And so this is Paul the pilot. This is the new record that I hadn't yet shared. I'm granting read. And then let's go take a look. And this. Now what I'm going to do is execute this. And this code has successfully run. And I can see that because I'm going to execute. And now I see 4 share records for Paul. So I've created a 4th share record for Paul. And I can validate that by going to the other browser. This is Paul the pilot. And I know that because this is Paul the pilot. And I am going to now see a 4th record where previously I had seen 3. So if we switch, we saw that we were adding 47827. 47827, and there we are. This new record has been granted access to him through that share. And if we come back to the console and I run my share reasons, you can see the 2nd share record. We can grab another random record here. Let's just scroll, grab ZKM, grab this, debug, execute anonymous, paste it into the parent, and create a 5th share record. Let's run the query again. So that's buffering. So let's actually make sure it doesn't buffer the query. I'm just going to give it something dummy. Take it away. And now I hit refresh, and I actually had created an extra share. So now you can see I've got a number of additional shares. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 share records. And if I switch, instead of 4 under Paul, Paul now has access to 6 shares. So a key element is you need to have the target user. You need to have the target record. You can actually query the shares, and that can make you decisions. And I showed you the code for actually inserting the share. Now, some considerations you need to make is that you need to have the following mechanisms in place. First, what is the criteria you're using on the target record? And how are you choosing on the target group? You need to know where and what is that criteria. Is it hard-coded? Is it driven by another object? Is it driven by custom metadata? You need to know what that criteria is to decide which records to share with which users and which groups. 2, you need to be knowing when the target records are changed. Because if new target records are created, who do you share them with? If something changes about a target record, either they're added, removed, then you need to decide which shares need to be added and removed. If a target record is based on a certain criteria and the record's edited, then that could cause shares to remove and new ones to be created. Then you need to know if there's new users or groups. Because if a new user is created, what shares do you need to add? If a user changes, like if you're doing a skills-based assignment of shares and some skill changes on the user, you might need to remove. So you need to know, you need to have a record or trigger flow on the target records, and you need to may have a record or trigger flow on the user records. Now you need to also ask your following questions. What if the criteria changes? Let's say you're storing your criteria in custom metadata. Then you might need a batch class to recalculate, and you need to understand the governor limits. You need to be thinking about how you're going to handle data loads, target records, target users. What if you're loading 1 million target records? What if you're loading, 1,000 users? And know if your code or flow is bulkified for large volumes for assigning the share records. And how will you handle initial loads of current target records and target users? Are you going to load them and have your code load the shares? Or are you going to bulk data load the shares yourself if you're talking about millions or more number of share records? So these are the mechanisms you have to have in place. So Apex sharing, also known as programmatic sharing, is very powerful. You can use Apex, you can use flows, you stick in your own share records, but you need to be doing the overhead. When do I do them? How do I manage it? What happens if new records? What happens if new users? This is part of the overhead of Apex sharing, though it is a very powerful tool in your tool bench. I hope this helps. So keep on programming the share. Join me again, same bat time, same bat channel at www.SteveTechArc.com and subscribe at SteveTechArc.com, and see you again soon. Thank you.